Tensions between India and Pakistan are heating up. There's credible intelligence that says that an attack from India is imminent. Lucas, fill us in on what's going on here. This is breaking international news.
Well, things came to a head. One, India and Pakistan have long been at odds since the creation of the countries. They were created as the British left after World War II and broke up the former country of India and also partitioned it. And I'm not sure how much people are familiar with the partition of India, but they had mass migrations based on the religions of the disparate populations in India, and Pakistan was created as a Muslim country. India was to be a Hindu country, and there was a notion that there would be countries left to their own devices as Britain left, and they would be autonomous in their religion. So that sort of sets up the countries, and afterwards there has long been a tension between India and Pakistan and the other countries that were carved out of India. Now, a lot of those tensions also come because they were used as proxies by the United States and Russia, or the Soviet Union at the time, and China. So that brings us to the present day. There's also a region in the north of India, in the to the east of Pakistan, to the west of China. So, and that region is called Kashmir. You can see it; it's in yellow at the very top of that map. And last week, 8 days ago, there was a terror attack. Gunmen came in and killed a massive number of. I'm not sure of the number that were killed. I think it was 26 tourists were killed while they were walking around a beautiful mountainous valley. So that attack was blamed on Pakistan, and the defense minister of Pakistan in a press conference immediately afterwards had some very interesting things to say. And the most interesting thing that he had to say was that Pakistan had long supported terrorist organizations at the behest of the United States. And so if we go back to the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, we also can start to look and see the influence of Americans or the United States policy of chaos in the region and the financing of terrorists. Syria today was taken over by terrorist cells that were financed and created by the United States and financed and created by the United States to destabilize countries that we thought were too deeply aligned with either Russia or China. So as the conflict between the United States and Iran was gaining steam, I had been wondering if we were going to see anything happening on the eastern borders of Iran. So I'm not saying that those are directly related, but we should not think of we should not think of the Middle East as being separate from India. That's actually an intentional name. The Middle East is an intentional name selected by the British and retained by the United States to deny the hegemony of China and India in those areas. So to call it the Middle East instead of Western Asia is a political psyop that Britain and the United States have long engaged in. So anyway, that sort of lays the groundwork. what do you think?
So the terror attack, they're suspecting, or that India is claiming that Pakistan was behind it, that this was a state-sponsored event.
Yes, so that's India's view of it. This was I guess that India probably makes the assumption that this was a terrorist group in Pakistan that that created terror in Kashmir to drive out Indians and to uh, with some sort of expectation that Pakistan could take this territory, that this disputed territory of Kashmir. Now, I don't understand how Pakistan, uh, how the government of Pakistan could think that credible, and the problem with the tool of terrorist organizations is they're not it's hard enough to control your own military, to finance and have terrorist organizations that exist autonomously with some sort of imprimatur of the government is an even bigger problem. And so I also think about the United States funding and relationships with these terror organizations, and I wonder, is there something greater going on here? Now, to the threat
Now,
of
when we think about a conflict between India and Pakistan, is this a classic kind of west to east matchup? As far as I recall, Pakistan usually aligns with Russia. So is this where India traditionally aligns with the United States and the UK? I mean, they have obviously strong ties to the UK historically, but is that sort of the shape up? Do we have another proxy war being set up between the East and the West?
Well, the proxy, yes, a proxy war, but not the players. So you actually have to work backwards from China because, again, this is Asia. This is Western Asia. Who's the biggest player in Asia? China is. Who's the second biggest player in Asia? India is. So this is actually usually the politics of the region are set up between the um, between the competition between China and India. So to that regard, Pakistan is supported by China. You know, India in in well, early in the nuclear games acquires their nuclear technology very early. But Pakistan in the 90s acquired nuclear technology from China. And so we also have to bear in mind, and again, as this narrative about the threat of Iran being based on their realization of nuclear weapons, that that this history of Pakistan and India also gaining nuclear weapons and not being the United States or European allies of the United States, or Russia, was a widening of the threat of nuclear annihilation. So, but Pakistan and India both have nuclear weapons. India has a much larger conventional army. I've talked about Iran's sort of abandoning this notion. Iran and Russia, honestly, and China abandoning this sort of 1950s idea of nuclear wars and mutually assured destruction, and turning towards supersonic missiles as being the basis of their of future conflicts. And now we also see them turning towards drones, the newer technology, and we've seen what Yemen is doing with, and when I say drones, cheap small drones, as opposed to American $30 million Predator, and I forget what the other drone is. But anyway, they're both nuclear countries, but India has a much larger conventional army than Pakistan. So I I I can't. I mean, I say I can't imagine. I doubt that we see an actual uh, war break out between India and Pakistan, but I also think that maybe more importantly, we should again go back to some of the larger proxies and say who is at work here. And we also have to begin to take into consideration the the changes, geopolitical changes that are occurring in Asia and uh, with Russia, China, India, and the development of the BRICS network, because some of these countries uh, that were traditionally at odds with each other and didn't come to the same table have sort of united in a with the BRICS alliance, with the BRICS platform, and also we've seen a. I mean, we saw we saw Saudi Arabia, the Prince of Saudi Arabia, write a letter to the Shah of Iran, and so there's some political realignments that have been happening. The leader of Qatar recently went to Russia, um, and I'm hoping that the emotional excitement that the attack in Kashmir has created is set aside. But this is cause for concern. Now, I think we also cannot put aside what has been going on with Israel, the United States, and Iran leading into this also. So um, we have seen Donald Trump talk about having talks with Iran. We've seen those talks progressing between Steve Witkoff, emissary of Donald Trump, President Trump, and the Iranians. We also, I don't know if this came on your radar, but there was an attack in a civilian port in Iran by Bandar Abbas recently, and 700 injured, I think somewhere around 40 deaths, 40 casualties in this massive explosion. And immediately it brought to my mind Lebanon and the explosion in the port at Lebanon. It also brought to my mind the pagers, the pagers that Israel detonated um, in their war with Hamas well, about a year ago. So I've seen nothing definitive about what caused this explosion in Bandar Abbas, but Israel has been lobbying the United States to go to war with Iran, and has been dismayed at the peaceful resolution that the Trump administration has been making progress towards. And simultaneously, we've also seen we've seen some shakeups going on in the Pentagon. We've seen leaks against Secretary Pete Hegseth. We've seen some of his aides being dismissed from the Pentagon, and I think that goes to disagreements in the United States the Defense Department and Trump administration with regards to what our response in Iran should be.
So this kind of speaks to the larger political situation that's happening with the Trump administration. We have Trump going after judges, picking a fight with the judiciary, and there's an internal war happening between higher ups within the Trump administration and the existing power infrastructure in the Pentagon.
Absolutely. And Donald Trump talked about this as being the greatest failure of his first administration. He didn't use those words, but he, in days before the election in November, he talked very candidly with Tucker Carlson about some of his defense advisors and about the war hawks and how the war hawks and the neocons were such a problem. And he also talked, he mentioned specifically in that discussion Liz Cheney and John Bolton, but he talked about how he kept John Bolton in the room to set the stage for conversations and détentes. And he was talking specifically about his meeting with Rocket Man Kim Jong-un of North Korea in his first administration. But with some of the selections that he made in his cabinet, I thought about his his the details that he revealed about his modus operandi whenever he was having those discussions with Tucker, or that discussion with Tucker, and talking about the problem of the neocon and Warhawk, the control that the Pentagon had over whatever administration came to power, because administrations come and go every 4 years, maybe 8 years, but they come up against bureaucrats in the State Department and the CIA, but also career military officials, and they also sitting in their offices and their seats of power exert a great amount of control over American foreign policy. So I have wondered, how Trump was going to countermand their expectations in the future and keep us from another Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, or Ukraine. So, one, I thought it was interesting that he selected Pete Hegseth. He's taken a lot of flack for that. Marco Rubio, who is also a neocon, but he selects Marco Rubio as a Secretary of State, but then uses this envoy Pete Witkoff as his voice. He's taken a lot of flack for that, but I think again this goes back to him trying to circumvent the problems of the policy that comes out from the institutions of the federal government, and trying to break away from that. And you think also I mean, one, I'm not trying to excuse or much less applaud Trump's response to Ukraine or Gaza, but while many have said, oh, he's bringing Benjamin Netanyahu to the White House as a matter of respect, I thought, well, but he was actually bringing Benjamin Netanyahu the first time to tell him that Gaza was now the United States problem and not his problem. And secondly, he brought him to the White House to break the news to him publicly, openly, and as a surprise that the United States was engaging with talks with Iran. So this seems to be how Trump operates. Hopefully he can secure some sort of stability and peace in the region and break the United States away from this, from reliance on the creation of chaos in these various regions of the world. But there are still, the United States is ostensibly still funding USAID and funding the terror organizations through the CIA and through the cutout organizations that we channel money through. This is it's going to be a hard beast to kill with American foreign policy. And so when I saw Pakistan and the terror group that was operating inside it, this also brings to mind, by the way, think back to the early in the Russian and Ukrainian conflict and the terror group that shot all those people in a theater in, I believe it was Moscow. Again, I wonder how deeply, or I wonder what sort of relationship the secretive and morally bankrupt portions of our military and State Department had, if they had any sway in that, because we know from history that this is their modus operandi. This is how they operate. And anyway.
Well, so If Pakistan is saying that an attack is imminent, like how credible do you think that is? Do you think that we're going to see something happen within the next 36 hours? Is India committed to a response to this terror attack?
So at the same time that the defense minister for Pakistan, and I haven't had a chance to listen to what Modi or the defense minister of India is saying, but one, um, I think talking about there can be a lot of bluster and bravado in the wake of great violence, and that both on the part of India and the part of Pakistan. So so India might be rattling its sabers and talking about, well, we're going to go take care of Pakistan, but I don't know that they necessarily want to be drawn into a conflict in Pakistan, especially as they are um, trying again to make this alliance off the dollar in the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. So with Pakistan being a proxy of China and India being concerned about their relationship with China, I I don't think that we're actually going to see a breakout of war here. Now, the politicians in India and Pakistan have history to work against them, so they might be rattling their sabers to make the domestic appearance that they're going to do something about this, and um, they create a lot of noise, but ultimately settle this. Now, with the remarks that Asif, the defense minister of Pakistan, was making, and I was listening to them live shortly before we began having this conversation. While he was saying that he expected an attack from India being imminent, he was in the same sentence saying that in no way did he nor Pakistan consider putting a nuclear response on the table. And with Pakistan having the weaker domestic force, I think that's very important. So maybe India finds some sort of terrorist cell that they can target inside of Pakistan, but Pakistan is also already laying the groundwork to say, one, these terrorist organizations in our country were we were doing the dirty work for the United States, and these terrorist organizations in our country are a problem. So they're distancing themselves from their terrorist organizations. That gives an opening for India to target that attack towards an actual terrorist organization. Secondly, they're taking the nuclear response off the table. And so if it's going to be a domestic response and they have much weaker domestic forces, I don't see Pakistan making that engaging in that. So maybe again what they're doing is opening up for a targeted attack to a terrorist organization in their country. Um, you know, I haven't brought also into consideration the politics in Pakistan, but Pakistan had a prime minister, Imran Khan, and there has been a long-standing political row going on in Pakistan as to the viability or who leads the country. And Imran Khan was a much more, I would say, anti-American, anti-terrorist group prime minister that was unseated due to lawfare, and I believe is currently in prison. He was sentenced for a long. He's in his 70s, but he was sentenced for something like 20, 30 years. I don't know if that original sentence held, but he's still in prison. Now, when Imran Khan was in power, one of the I don't know, breaks from traditional government policy that he made was to call for a referendum in Kashmir and self-determination of that area. I don't know how excited India was about that, and I don't know how that vote would go out. But think about the the same issues that we saw going on in Ukraine, and the call that now I can't remember who was in power before Zelensky, who was unseated in the Maidan coup. Um, there had you know there had been a call for referendums in the northern the northern territories or governorates of the Ukraine and of Crimea, leading into this Russian and Ukrainian conflict. So, whenever I see politicians calling for self-determination and referendums, it's interesting to see the United States once upheld that, and in the last 20 years since our wars in Iraq and Afghanistan has been against self-determination and has talked instead about uh, the abuse of those in power in these various areas of the world, and the corruption in elections. So, corruption in elections or not, I think that that self determination and referendums are a a a better resolution than terrorist attacks and you know uh, installing the military in those areas to maintain control. Go ahead, Rusty.
Yeah, I wanted to add on to this subject that we're talking about between the tensions of India and Pakistan. I was searching online and I found an article that was released today in the India's main paper, the Times of India. And it says that after the suspending the Indus Water Treaty, India may oppose the IMF's $1.3 billion loan to Pakistan. So it looks like Pakistan on July 2024 took out a $7 billion loan from the IMF to help rebuild some of these stuff within their country. And it looks like on May 9th, they're doing an addition to that of another $1.3 billion on top of that. And it looks like India might be considering to oppose that benefit of money on concerns about the terror support and fund misappropriation. And I was just wanting to bring that up to your and let you and get your kind of take on it, what you think about, kind of the IMF kind of being, I don't know if it's kind of like a high school group almost, where you got certain people as groups or cliques within it that can kind of control the way it goes. And you got India and kind of the United States against Pakistan and China and some of the other countries that are involved in the IMF.
Well, you bring up. I'm glad you brought this up. I one of the this was the first response that I saw from India after the terrorist response, and that was that they were going to cut off water to Pakistan. So, and this and bringing in the IMF loans compounds the intrigue of what is going on here. Now, a little bit of history as to the Indus the Indus water the Indus River agreement. Part of the reason that the United States has influence and Pakistan has credibility to some extent, that maybe we have corroded a bit in the last 15, 20 years. The dam that was built to make the reservoir and the resulting water treaty that came from it was financed by the United States. And when I say financed, I think there was loans that were given to India and Pakistan, but half of it was actually paid for by the United States. Fast forward to China's Belt and Road Initiative and how they've been cementing that that relationship with countries around the world. They have been both financing infrastructure projects in various countries, but also been maybe paying for quite a bit of it themselves, or at least providing the labor for it. So, but this also speaks to a world that may be warming up, that may be facing more droughts. Pakistan may feel, you, you know, I don't know. I don't know I don't know what's going to happen here. I don't know how long India can hold that water back. But this also speaks to um, some of the problems with the political lines of countries that we have around the world, and why maybe colonial powers might have drawn up political boundaries that created problems with who holds water in highlands and where that water goes to lower, drier areas. As far as the IMF loan, again, we begin to compound the strength of the American dollar. The IMF is the International Monetary Fund. It works in concert with the World Bank. The IMF gives out loans with money that is deposited in the nations that engage in global trade and deposit money in the World Bank. And the World Bank and the IMF were created in 1944 to project the dollar from the United States out into the world. So when we talk about the BRICS system and its competition with the dollar, it is with the IMF and the World Bank specifically that with loans from the IMF and the World Bank that are going to be in competition. And then we turned again to Pakistan's relationship with China. This may be a larger play by the governments who are seeking to get off the IMF loans. I'm not sure. I'm not sure, Rusty, but
Well, it just made me think. I saw this article and I was thinking, you've mentioned a couple of times on the show how certain countries get special treatment from the IMF depending on how much they invest into the funds themselves, and that they can get better outcomes depending on which country it comes from. I just think that it can kind of add up into the tensions of what's going on. And then I saw lately that India, you were mentioning in the beginning of the show that India was set up to be more of a Hinduist country and Pakistan was supposed to be more of a Muslim country. And I saw recently that India has been destroying and tearing down a lot of its mosques and Muslim churches in this country. And I wonder if that is an escalation or more of a fuel on the fire for something like this.
absolutely it has. And Narendra Modi has been, yes, the I'm not sure. Like I would love to have somebody who is more knowledgeable with what is occurring in India, because I've seen reports of that. I'm not sure how much to believe corporate media, how much of that was spin coming from America Media and America State Department that's relaying some of that information to the media, because the United States is trying to be subversive against the Modi regime. But yes, I think that's a reality. We also had the coup in Bangladesh recently. Bangladesh was another Muslim carve out from India. So I'm not sure what to say there, Rusty, but there is racial tension in India, and um, and I would also say that maybe Britain and, well, especially Britain in the Great Partition, and the assumption that that countries should have a religious, should have one religion behind the ruling regime was well intended, but I don't know how true that is holding. And again, I look to Syria, and the attacks on the Alawites, and it seems now that the Al Jawani and the um, uh, the Islamic regime in Syria is now turning against the Druze population. Maybe they have created a monster. I also look towards the what the narrative of Israel as being a Jewish state, while many of those who are operating under that banner are atheist and claim Judaism as an ethnicity rather than a religion. And some of the pushback from the Orthodox Jewish religions and those people who've been there in the area for a while. So there has been even in the United States, we don't like to think about it, but a lot of our expectations of our government and of the American population has very Protestant underpinnings, and we've eroded that with a broadening of that to Catholicism and Judaism since World War II, especially, but and maybe to include more religions since the 90s, maybe since 2000, but that's still a pretty touchy subject in the United States, and I see a lot of sort of vitriol against Sharia law and some of the MAGA or nationalist policies that we see in various countries around the world today have this notion of religious purity. But I think that has been a highway to hell. And somehow we've got to get away from it. But yes, that is a reality in India. So we're rolling up on 40 minutes. I don't know if you guys have any other thoughts before we close it out. We've kind of covered a lot of ground today, but there's a lot going on.
Maybe just to follow up, where's a good place to be watching? Is there somebody on X that you think is covering this situation? So if people want to stay abreast of what's happening here, is there a good place to keep an eye on?
I haven't seen
Not particularly, just watch for spaces.
Yeah, I would say just keep an eye on it. No, I don't know. I don't know anyone who's covering this in depth. Maybe
sometimes Scott Ritter covers stuff like this. I just wasn't sure if he was somebody that was actively tracking this, or if you knew.
Not Scott Ritter, not Larry Wilkerson, maybe Douglas McGregor, but I haven't seen a lot of focus on this conflict in India, in Pakistan. I've seen a lot of those sort of American defense policy wonks more focused on Ukraine and Iran. But if yes, I would say keep an eye on Scott Ritter and Larry Wilkerson and Douglas McGregor. If you're going to hear reality and a fair take from anyone, it will be them.
All right. Well, we'll keep an eye on it. Hopefully, we do not have a new war outbreak and that tensions can be de-escalated. But we'll definitely be watching for it, and we'll see you next time on FOMO.